San Francisco, the city by the sea.
California really was the Golden State when I arrived in the 70s. The streets of San Francisco were vibrant, free, and filled with hope. Now my beloved San Francisco has become known as ground zero for our nation's homelessness crisis.
Things are worse now for the homeless than ever.
San Franciscans have reached a tipping point.
After 40 years of failed approaches to reverse homelessness here, these once hopeful streets are filled with despair and brokenness. And until we tackle this problem, this will be our narrative.
There isn't enough drug treatment for everybody in the city.
What are you doing with all this money that has been allotted to the city? Where's that going?
So there's almost no development that anyone has a legal right to do in California.
We have pitted the smallest differences against each other.
You cannot arrest this issue away. You cannot arrest homelessness away.
Nobody is doing anything transformational.
Leaving people untreated is murder.
We're throwing vast resources at this issue, and it just keeps going up. Really? We can't come up with anything better than that?
Beyond Homeless, Finding Hope is an exploration of what's driving the homelessness crisis here in California, and a look at alternative approaches around the country that offer hope with real solutions. Join us in changing the narrative of our nation's homelessness crisis.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is wonderful to be able to welcome people in person to an event. Isn't that great? Although we do have folks that are joining us over the internet, and we welcome you as well. We are thrilled to have you here. We're going to be doing some great stuff today. We're going to be ringing in Christmas. If you haven't already passed by the kettle, make sure you don't pass one by without putting something in. That helps us do what we do throughout the year. We're going to celebrate some great work that the Salvation Army and other groups do throughout the community. And we're going to discuss the challenging issue of homelessness here in San Francisco. But before we do anything else, I just want to ask, as is our custom in the Salvation Army, just ask the Lord's blessing on today's event. So let me pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you. We thank you for the opportunity to come together, to be with one another, to see smiling faces. And Lord, thank you for the work that is done in this city, not just the work by the Salvation Army, but all the groups, all the people that play a part in serving the folks that are in need in this city. Lord, I thank you for the servers who made the food, and all of the folks who have come today, the people who made this event possible. Thank you. We don't say thanks enough. This is a time of thanksgiving, and we would just want to say thank you. And we place this event in your hands. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. When the pandemic hit, it took everyone by surprise. I don't know how many of you folks recall trying to find toilet paper or simple things. You go to a grocery store and the shelves were bare. Imagine being somebody who's homeless in that situation. When the call came out that the city was going to have to close down shelters, or at least thin them out, we knew that there were going to be thousands of people more put onto the street. And so we called the mayor's office, we called the city and said, what can the Salvation Army do to make a difference? And he said, feed people. We need you to feed people. We need you to go tent by tent by tent. And that's exactly what we did. We mobilized an army. That army was made up of many people from all walks of life. And there's a video we're going to show here in just one moment. And you'll notice in that video is our new board chairman for the San Francisco Advisory Board, Craig Mesenbrink. He is a man of action and commitment to doing the most good. Please enjoy this video.
The Salvation Army is looking for volunteers to help deliver meals to the homeless during the COVID-19 pandemic. They started a new food delivery program called Meals in Place SF, and KTVU's Alyssa Harrington shows us how it works.
Anyone like a lunch?
I think they're wonderful to come out to see us. and to feed us.
Marcy Lynn Croft received a food box from volunteers with the Salvation Army. She's among thousands of homeless living on the streets of San Francisco, unable to take shelter inside during the shelter in place.
We're just living in a very different day right now, so everything is different.
Major Darren Norton said COVID-19 has changed the way the Salvation Army is able to serve the homeless population. They can no longer offer group meals, so they deliver food instead.
We are so excited and grateful that we can provide this food to these people, plus a visit from a Salvation Army volunteer, officer, or staff member to just let them know that they're loved and they're cared about, that we're thinking of them, and we just want to help them during this crisis.
Hello, Salvation Army.
Saturday, they delivered 665 meals at encampments in Soma and the Tenderloin. Volunteers helped pack the food.
I really wanted to help those that cannot find enough food, don't have a place to live.
It's a beautiful thing that you still have people in the world that care about others, you know, and we greatly appreciate it.
The Salvation Army is in need of additional volunteers and donations to continue this food box program. The plan is to provide meals 7 days a week during the pandemic. Norton says this is the safest option to prevent an outbreak at an encampment. They don't want people to expose themselves to the virus while searching for something to eat.
There's a lot of fear and uncertainty amongst them out there. They want to shelter in place and remain where they're at.
Alyssa Harrington, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
Hello, everyone. How's everybody doing today? You know, as Major Matt indicated, isn't it nice to be face to face? It is terrific. I want to welcome you all here today, as well as those tuning in remotely. As Major Matt indicated, my name is Craig Mesenbrink, and I am the board chair for the San Francisco Metro Advisory Board. On behalf of the Salvation Army, I want to welcome everybody here today. While my journey to and with the Salvation Army has been going on for many years, started back in Texas, I'm so excited to be here in San Francisco and with all you, with everybody here today participating in these changing times. I must say, it appears my wife and I may have made the opposite commute. So, the rumors are that there's a lot of folks leaving California going to Texas, and here a few years ago, my wife and I made the decision to move from Texas to San Francisco. I think I went the right direction, didn't I? Yeah. Fun fact, my daughter was just married this past Saturday. Thank you. So this is actually the second most important speech I'll deliver in the last 5 days. But anyway, I've been continually amazed at the Salvation Army and the work that's done, especially since COVID disrupted our lives. As you saw, Samantha and I have been out helping deliver just a tiny fraction of the more than 500,000 meals that have been delivered over the past 18 months. 500,000 plus meals. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. Give this Salvation Army team a hand. Yeah, absolutely. I do want to thank Mayor London Breed for being here today. I know she's on her way in. She's part of an amazing panel that we're going to hear from. I also want to congratulate First Republic Bank, Lena Robinson, the whole FRB team, and their tireless support for homeless, the city, and the Salvation Army. I want to, yeah. Thank you, FRB. I want to thank all the sponsors. You're seeing folks on the folks in your program today, and I especially want to recognize the folks at the $10,000 and above level. Amazing, and thank you so much. There's so many others that give of their time and money to this amazing mission, and it's obviously too many to count, but that's part of what we're here today to do. We're in transformational times, not only the city of San Francisco, the Salvation Army, but the Way Out program. As you're going to hear, the Way Out transforms lives. But in order to do that, we're going to have to transform some of our facilities as well. I think my engineering construction background is going to be put to the test as we move forward. So your support is vital. Please consider all the ways that you can continue to support the Salvation Army in this awesome mission. We're embarking on an amazing journey to create upwards of 1,500 beds for this Way Out program. These beds are going to be and represent change, hope, and hopefully some God as well in there. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn this program back over to Major Matt for the recognition of our honoree. Thank you again and welcome.
It's a privilege to be able to recognize our honoree today. This city is so large, it has so much need, there's no one organization that can do it all. And I would like to introduce to you Lena Robinson. She's the director of the community development for First Republic Bank. And in this role, Ms. Robinson works to identify lending and investment opportunities that support affordable housing, economic development, and asset building in the bank's core markets. Within the organization, Ms. Robinson is tasked with managing key relationships with all business lines and in the implementation of bank employee engagement programs. Through collaboration with nonprofit organizations, community groups, and government agencies, she also plays an important role in the development of strategies that support and achieve optimal outcomes for financially underserved households and communities. Prior to joining First Republic, Ms. Robinson worked at the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco in varying roles, culminating as the regional manager overseeing community development in Northern California. And in this capacity, she worked to increase investments and improve access to capital and credit and banking services for low-income communities and households. While at the Federal Reserve, Lena was instrumental in spearheading and implementing a number of innovative private-public initiatives that focused on some of the most pressing challenges in underserved communities, including closing that wealth gap that we hear so much about, revitalization of distressed commercial districts, and reintegration of formerly incarcerated individuals. Now, if this is just one person on the team from First Republic, can you imagine what the whole team is able to accomplish? Lena, come on up to the stage.
Thank you. Wow, thank you so much.
It's great to
appreciate it.
Great to have you.
Thank you so much. I think Ernst is coming. Should I wait for Ernst?
Well, yes, let's go ahead. Let's
do it right now.
Let's do this. Let's get this done. Wow. Lena, on behalf of the Salvation Army, we would like to present you with this beautiful bowl to First Republic Bank. It's a privilege to serve with you, working together to combat homelessness and poverty in San Francisco. It's got the First Republic logo and the Salvation Army logo there. And we just want to say thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll take these back there.
Okay.
We'll do the photo op. Yes, let's go ahead and get a photo. There we go.
Great. Thank you both so much, and good afternoon, everyone. It's truly a privilege to be here and truly an honor for me to accept this award on behalf of everyone at First Republic. I want to recognize all of our distinguished guests and public officials today, and I want to thank the staff of the Salvation Army who put this together and the Honorary Host Committee. I really appreciate the opportunity to be together again in a room with so many good people. First Republic sincerely appreciates this recognition of our efforts to be a responsive corporate partner and support the vital work of the Salvation Army. Every day we strive to be a force for good where we work and live, because our community involvement is guided by our corporate value to do the right thing. And our relationship with the Salvation Army is just one example of our commitment to helping nonprofits build stronger communities. First Republic Bank has been a longtime partner of organizations like the Salvation Army, working to address homelessness by offering a hand up for vulnerable members of our community and in supporting families of all backgrounds to overcome obstacles, optimize opportunities, maximize their potential, and realize their dreams. To our friends at the Salvation Army, thank you for the numerous ways you show up in the lives of so many. As we saw from the video, through housing, job training, spiritual support, after-school programs, backpack giveaways, or handing out food, your track record of making a difference is exemplary. I want to thank my colleagues and acknowledge First Republic leadership for their commitment to the communities we serve. I'm so pleased today to be joined by members of our team, ranging in tenure from 10 years to over 25 years. Catherine Lawrence is in the program today, Kelly Abreu on the Honorary Committee, and Jenny Mendoza is my colleague. I'm also so pleased to be joined by members of colleagues who came to serve as volunteers to help with setting up and with greeting you. In 2020, First Republic employees volunteered over 20,000 hours in the communities where they work. Because it takes more than money. It takes people who are available to contribute their time and energy for a greater purpose, whether that's serving on a board, setting up the chairs, or ringing the kettlebell, as I did one Christmas at Union Square. Ring those bells. Ultimately, we are all stakeholders in the world where we live and the changes we want to see. So thank you all for making the time to be here, to celebrate this tradition, and for generously sharing your resources to ensure that mission-driven organizations like the Salvation Army have the capacity to do what needs to be done. It is still needed and more relevant than ever. As a Director of Community Development for First Republic Bank, it is what gets me up in the morning and keeps me hopeful that things will get better for so many in need. Thank you again on behalf of everyone at First Republic. This is a tremendous honor, and we greatly appreciate it.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Major Darren Norton, and with my wife, Major Mary, we're the divisional leaders for the Golden State Division, and we're just thrilled to have you here today. It's really my honor at this moment to welcome to this stage someone that will be very familiar to you. Mayor London Breed is here to share some comments. She is a wonderful friend and supporter of the Salvation Army. And we are thrilled that she's here today. On Thursday of next week, she will be at our Chinatown facility helping to distribute meals, Thanksgiving meals to people in need. Earlier this year, because of the mayor's support, because of our partnership with the mayor's office, with Department of Public Health, an organization called PRC Baker Places, the Salvation Army helped to open a Hummingbird site at our facility in the Mission District. It's an overnight shelter and a day center for people with mental health disabilities. It's a respite center, and it's something that we opened as a joint project earlier this year. And so I'm so glad for the mayor's support, for her encouragement, and we're so thrilled to have her here today. So would you greet with me Mayor London Breed?
Thank you, Major Norton, and it is really great to be here with each and every one of you. Good to see you, former Mayor Art Agnes, who will be on a panel a little bit later, and yet again, there's no surprise, former Mayor Willie Brown is late again, but I'm sure he'll be here shortly. Well, I gotta say, hearing that kettlebell just a moment ago just takes me back to my childhood, and there's just something about San Francisco during the holiday season. When you go downtown and you hear those bells, you know it's a time of that, it's a season of giving, it's a season that people are coming together, families and friends. It's a time to cozy up in the house and just drink warm hot chocolate and eat Thanksgiving dinner and turkey and gumbo and all the fixins. It was my favorite time of the year because it also meant that we didn't have to go to school. Although I think kids nowadays will say something completely different as a result of this pandemic. But more importantly, the Salvation Army, since the late 1800s, has been that place or that organization that this city and this country relied on to help those who didn't always have a roof over their heads, those who were less fortunate, who needed a helping hand. And they have been continuing that work for decades, over a century. And we are so honored here in San Francisco with everything we are trying to do to address homelessness. We could not do this work without extraordinary partners like the Salvation Army. In fact, in meeting with them since I've been mayor, every time they've come to my office, it has always been, this is what we have to offer. This is what we want to do. The Hummingbird site, which helps people who are formerly homeless, who have behavioral health challenges, is our second location that we opened in San Francisco. And had it not been for the partnership between PRC and the Salvation Army, we would not have that location. The Salvation Army, in fact, is committed to helping to house over 1,500 people in this city. And we are so grateful for their partnership because as a result of the support of the people of San Francisco, we're able to invest over the next 2 years $1 billion to address homelessness in San Francisco. We have a homeless recovery plan where we plan to house 6,000 people in the next 5 years. And in fact, during this pandemic, it demonstrated that we can move quickly, we can make change, we can help people off the streets. Over 3,600 people were housed in trailers and shelter-in-place hotels and our safe sleeping sites because we had to empty our shelter beds during COVID. We saw an increase of homelessness in San Francisco. And this is the thing I know that is most important to San Franciscans, but on a personal level, it's most important to me. I don't want to see what is happening in our city continue to happen, but I also understand that I can't do it alone. And so today is just really a day of appreciation to all of you for your continued support of the Salvation Army and the work that we have to do together to address one of the most challenging issues of our time. Yes, we've been through a global pandemic, one which none of us thought could ever be possible. I know Mayor Agnes is like, I'm so glad I wasn't mayor during a global pandemic, but you were mayor during an earthquake, so you know how it feels. It is not fun. But the pandemic taught me, I mean, when I look at what San Francisco did, I'm so proud because many of you did what you had to do. You sheltered in place because we asked. You made adjustments. People weren't able to see one another, friends, family, grandmas and kids and the like. And what we saw in San Francisco, one of the densest cities in the country, was one of the lowest death rates in the country, and now one of the highest vaccination rates in the country. So I feel strongly that when we want to do something, when we get rid of the politics and the bureaucracy and the mess and the noise, we can make magic happen for people's lives. Through the governor's Project Room Key, which you'll hear about today during the conversation, we were able to purchase a number of hotels that were empty during the pandemic, and we were renting them, and then we were able to purchase them, and I had a chance to visit them and talk to people and hear their stories as to what landed them on the streets in the first place. Down on their luck, not making enough money, struggles with addiction, a number of challenges. There is not a one-size-fits-all. But what we have to do in this city is to make sure that we understand those challenges and make the appropriate investments in order to get people housed, to get them the wraparound services they need, to purchase hotels, to rent rooms, to build housing faster. All of those things will make a difference around housing and affordability in our city. And again, we cannot do that work without partners like the Salvation Army. So I want to thank you again for your support. I know today's conversation will be a hard conversation, a very intense conversation, and the final thing that I will say about homelessness, because everyone talks about homelessness as if what we see out on our streets has everything to do with just homelessness. It has a lot to do with people struggling from behavioral health challenges, which is why Hummingbird on Valencia is so important. It has a lot to do with people who struggle with addiction, which is why I am so determined to get a safe consumption site open in San Francisco. It has a lot to do with so many complex issues. And these issues, they won't go away just because we don't want to see them. We have to invest and work hard on every single one of these issues every single day until we see things turn around for the lives that we are trying to serve and protect in San Francisco. So thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you to the Salvation Army for your commitment, and let's go out there and ring those bells.
Well, we're so grateful for the mayor coming and for her comments. Oh, we do have some beautiful flowers for you, just as a appreciation for your being with us today.
You want to make the official presentation?
I will hold these. There we go.
Yes, you can hand them to me. It's been a long time since a man gave me long stem red roses.
Thank you so much, really. Wonderful comments from the mayor. She cares deeply about this city, and as you heard, she is a great friend and partner and supporter of the work that the Salvation Army is doing and the work that we are aiming to do. Well, I know that you're hungry, and so we're going to give you time now to just relax and enjoy a conversation around the tables, and the servers will begin to bring out your lunch. So please enjoy time, and we'll pick up the program a little bit later on. Thank you.
Boom boom, boom boom, boom boom, boom boom, boom boom, boom.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Theo Ellington, Director of Homeless Initiatives and Community Development. I'm Major David Pierce, the Executive Director at the excellent Harbor Light Center here in the Soma part of San Francisco.
Excellent. I like to say the flagship. This is the flagship program.
We are the flagship program. You're absolutely right.
All right. Tell us what we're doing here and what type of programming happens.
So the Harbor Light Center has space for 236 family or persons. So we have a homeless shelter that has 150 people and then 136 people looking for help with substance abuse problems. Our programs are designed to help people get into housing or to overcome the effects of drugs and alcohol.
And right now we are standing in the heart of what?
The courtyard of the Harbor Light Center. This is one of the most beautiful places here in San Francisco is our courtyard.
So this year's theme for the holiday luncheon is centered around homelessness. And it's very fitting that we're here because the way out, the core of its program evolves around everything that happens here at the Harbor Light program.
Absolutely. That was the wise decision, was to make everything at the Harbor Light Center.
That's right. We're looking to ensure that folks who are recovering from alcohol and drug abuse have a place to stay, have a solid foundation, and that work can't happen without our partners. I was fortunate enough to sit down with Sarah Crevens from Sutter Health. She's the president and CEO, and we're getting ready to show a video of an interview in Sacramento with Sarah Crevens from Sutter Health.
First off, Sarah, I want to say thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to come speak with you about all the great things you're doing. I specifically want to highlight all the work that Sutter Health has done and provided for the Salvation Army here in Northern California, Modesto in particular. You guys are strong partners of ours.
Yeah, and you have been a wonderful partner. We couldn't do the good things we're doing without the Salvation Army.
Absolutely. And you play, I mean, you wear many hats.
Yes.
Obviously, like I say, I was doing something earlier and I said, I've got my main gig and then I've got my other sort of hats that I wear. You sit on the Bay Area Council.
Yes.
And you chair co-chair the homeless subcommittee.
Yes.
And a lot of the work that we're doing with the Salvation Army in San Francisco and in the Bay Area for that matter, we're looking to really reinvent ourselves.
Yeah.
I like to say we're showing up in a different way and reintroducing ourselves to the social service sector in San Francisco. We are getting ready to embark on our largest expansion since arriving in San Francisco in 1883.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, we're not there yet. We're getting there, but super exciting. But one of the things in terms of policy that keeps coming up, again, this is looking at the regional perspective, is our housing system. Yeah. It's broken.
Yes.
And many of these challenges we see in everyday people. Since the pandemic happened, we are seeing folks from all walks of life at our front door, whether it be food, homeless services, you name it, folks are at our front door. And we think that this will get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
But obviously we remain hopeful. But if we look specifically at our housing system and public policy, how do you think we can make a positive difference and sort of shift these dynamics? Is it policy change? Is it better advocacy, public-private partnerships? What do you see with your work at the Bay Area Council?
Yeah, so I would say it's probably yes, yes, and yes, right? And you are so much more of an expert in this than I am. But as I look at it, the homeless population is not a homogeneous population. Mm-hmm. And there's not going to be one single answer.
Correct.
The person who loses their apartment because they just lost their job and they've missed, they don't have rent, has a different set of issues than the child who emancipates out of foster care and has no adult to support them and no sense of how to actually even manage on their own. Mm-hmm. That's a different issue maybe than the returning veteran has, and maybe a different issue than somebody who's chronically homeless because of other kinds of either economic, social, or mental health conditions. And so it's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and we need to be very thoughtful, and we need to not sort of stigmatize homelessness and treat it as if every homeless person is the same, and really think about what are the programs and services that work for each population, each person.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think, 2 points that you've mentioned, which is almost a natural segue into my next question, this idea of chronic homelessness. That I think is solvable, right? There are people who, no one should be on the streets.
Right.
chronically, right? No one should be on the streets to the point where it's drastically changing their lives. There are several approaches that we often are presented with in terms of how we address homelessness. And we've seen this play itself out in San Francisco. You mentioned there not being a one-size-fits-all approach, which I agree with 100%. But we've seen things like housing first, rapid rehousing, harm reduction methods, particularly now at a time where, I hate to sound so cynical, but where I think we'll see the numbers get worse before they get better.
Yes. Realistic.
Realistic, yes. Are there different focus areas, mental health treatment, substance abuse treatment that need attention just as much as housing?
Yeah, well, not just for the population that's either homeless or at risk of being homeless, but the issues around mental health and access to mental health services are a problem throughout our country and have been a problem in California before the pandemic. What's happened during the pandemic has been that the number of people who report feeling anxious and depressed has risen dramatically. People are socially isolated, they're worried economically, they're scared, they're not seeing their family or friends. If they're an essential worker, they may feel that they're living in a very different universe than people who are either not working or working at home. And so I think mental health care is important for everyone. I think it's particularly important to wrap services around individuals who are either homeless or at risk of being homeless. If we can prevent somebody from becoming homeless, that's the very best thing. And then rapid rehousing, as you mentioned, the next best thing. And then thinking about, well, what's after that? What's after that? But we have to support people's mental health. And that's something that's important for all of us, right? It's important if you're employed. It's important if you're elderly. It's important if you're homeless. But it's difficult for anyone to get access to mental health services. There's a real scarcity in many communities. And of course, it's particularly hard, if you have all of the challenges that come with being homeless.
Absolutely. I think you hit on a couple different things that this new initiative called The Way Out,
yes,
we're looking to implement. Obviously, the housing piece is important. We are really introducing this new model of service. So right now, the way the system works is you get assigned to a shelter or a navigation center in San Francisco, or a 6 to 9 month sort of treatment program. And you complete that program, you may get assigned to an SRO or housing, and then the support that you need, these mental health services that we're talking about, the substance abuse services that we're talking about, you kind of fall flat after that.
Right.
And we call it a wash machine because you fall back into homelessness, oftentimes a deeper state of homelessness. So we want to really disrupt that cycle. And the way we're doing that is through a simple model that we're calling Live, Work, Love. Live being the housing aspect, where we want to take that 6 month period that I mentioned earlier, and we want to expand that up to 3 years.
Yeah.
So folks really have some stability. We want to provide wraparound services. So you are getting the elements of harm reduction that includes sort of peer-to-peer mentoring, that includes a certain level of accountability, that includes sobriety. And then the last piece is the work piece. There's no way in this economy that we can't not allow ourselves to not only put people in housing, not only give them services, but prepare them to get back into the workforce, because it's economics at the end of the day.
That's wonderful. That would really be an amazing gift to those individuals and to the whole community if you were able to get the support to do that extension. Because 6 months for many people, that's just not enough. If you could support them for 2 years, that would be miraculous.
Absolutely.
That'd be wonderful.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do. And we think, we've got a property stronghold. We're the largest provider of addiction treatment in America. So we've got the tools, and it's about finding, obviously, partners like Sutter Health to help sort of drive that mission home and really bring people back to living a life of sobriety. Jobs, the economy.
Yes.
one of the biggest uncertainties here are finances. People need to earn a living. When it comes to the healthcare industry, can you talk just a little bit about just the future of work? What jobs are available tomorrow, and how do we prepare, folks like the Salvation Army, how do we get people ready for jobs in the healthcare industry?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think the future of work broadly, as well as in healthcare. And, right now we are in a period of time when many healthcare providers are seeing fewer patients in certain kinds of settings because patients may be reluctant to seek care. Although I always encourage people, we will keep you safe. Our staff are well trained. They have personal protective equipment. We'll keep you safe. If you have a healthcare need, see your doctor, right? See your doctor, see your nurse practitioner, see your dentist, see whatever it is you need to seek. And we also learn to provide care in different ways through video visits, telephonic visits, artificial intelligence. But there are, in some parts of healthcare, just like there are in many parts of the economy in California, there is a decrease in volume, right? People are staying home, they're doing less. But I'm a kind of think of myself as a realistic optimist. This is a wonderful state. People will return to work. People will return to being able to be out and to go and enjoy all the wonderful things the Bay Area has to offer, and they'll return to seeking healthcare when they need healthcare. And I believe over time, if you look at the demographics of what's happening, there are going to be good jobs in healthcare, just like there are today, and good entry-level jobs. And even today, with everything that's happening economically, we're continuing to hire registered nurses, we're continuing to hire technical staff. And there are across the broad, sort of healthcare field, there are a lot of jobs in healthcare that work for entry-level workers. Or, another thing that is so wonderful is, the Salvation Army and Sutter and some of the community colleges all focus on what can we do to get people ready for jobs that don't need a degree, right? And so there are some jobs that they may need some training, but they don't need somebody to go to a 2-year college or a 4-year college to be able to do that job. And home health aides, people who work in board and care facilities, those kinds of entry-level jobs, they require some training, but it's not, it's not forever. And I think people who have love in their hearts and who care for their, who really care about other people, healthcare is a wonderful field. And I do think that there are opportunities, but like everything right now in the economy, things are tough. Things are challenging, and it's really important that people who have the ability, I think, to give and to help that. Philanthropy's made a big difference in what we can do. I know philanthropy makes a big difference in what you can do, and I think some of this is going to be about people lending a helping hand to one another to get through it.
So I want to jump back to healthcare and homelessness and really draw just a physical connection that I think often goes unnoticed, and that's the emergency room.
Yeah.
So for many medical institutions, they see a spike in unhoused individuals inside their emergency rooms for whatever reason, right? There is folks going in for routine care. There are folks using the emergency room for acute care, for follow-up appointments, and even for extreme cases. How has Sutter Health responded to this phenomenon, and who is ultimately responsible for caring for our unhoused and uninsured residents?
Yeah, so it's really a great question. And I would tell you, in many communities, our partnership with the Salvation Army has been part of the solution. And just like we talked earlier, that there are lots of different reasons that people become homeless, there are lots of different reasons that people who are homeless end up in the emergency room. And so you have to really understand that. It may be that it's the only place they feel welcome. So, you can fund all kinds of alternate treatment sites and put a lot of money into it. But if when the person goes there, they don't feel welcome and they don't feel seen and they don't feel respected, We did an interesting survey in the East Bay, actually, about why were people who had access to certain outpatient clinic sites showing up at the emergency room. And we assumed that maybe it was because they didn't have transportation or didn't know what the hours were. But sometimes it was because they felt that they were respected more, or that they got more of all of the things they needed. They could leave with a starter dose of antibiotics if they had an infection. They leave with clothes if they don't have clothes. They are fed if they need to be fed. So sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's they don't know where else to go. Sometimes it's because other agencies will bring them there. They'll think this is a good and safe place. And I'm proud that we can be that safe haven, but we're not always the best place. And that's why I love our partnerships with the Salvation Army, with some of our federally qualified health centers, to say, it's great we can take care of you in this moment, but how do we have a warm and, loving, using your word, kind of wraparound set of services that keeps you safe, right? That keeps you well. How do we set up shelters, as we did together, that are willing to take an individual, a person who also has medical needs, right? Because in a lot of shelters, if you have certain medical needs, they feel they can't safely care for you. So then where does that put that homeless individual? So how do we have shelters that feel comfortable and confident that they can take care of those individuals? How do we then help connect those individuals to ongoing care for their medical system? That's why the program you described, and taking it from 6 months to 2 years, part of that wraparound set of services is connecting people with the healthcare system in a way that works for them, I think.
Absolutely. And I think, we deal with a lot of folks living on the margins, and people who have slipped through the cracks. And the term in the sort of social services spaces, we use this continuum of care. So, much like your street nurses program, where you're getting folks literally on the street level, we think that we can provide services from the streets to permanent supportive housing, all under the umbrella of Salvation Army umbrella.
Yeah, it's a wonderful vision.
We are trekking forward, and that's what leaves me hopeful. Is that we have a dedicated group of people who are called to do this work. We have a dedicated group of people who support this sort of system and program that we're building. And 2020 has been a whirlwind, as we all know, socially, emotionally, economically. What are some things that you are seeing that just keep you hopeful, that helps you get through, this crazy time?
I would say it's really a couple of things. So inside of Sutter Health, it's just how incredibly dedicated our people are. And, they just showed up and were there at the very beginning of this pandemic when no one had any, we don't know everything we need to know today about COVID-19, but we knew a whole lot less, right, 6 months ago. And yet we had staff who typically work in an outpatient setting or an ambulatory surgery setting volunteer to be retrained. Maybe they hadn't worked inside of a hospital for a long time, but they said, I'm willing to do this if you need me. And, I'll be retrained to do that. We had people who normally work in support services volunteer to go check temperatures at the door and to screen so that patients could safely come in to get care. We had people really looking after each other. We had really a very severe outbreak at one point in the Central Valley in Modesto, very hard-hit community. And one of our facilities that had early on been very hard hit in the pandemic, the staff collected money for chocolate and shoe inserts and, just little things. And they drove them from the Bay Area up to Modesto and gave them to the staff up in Modesto. So internally to Sutter Health, those things give me help. In the broader community, I see a lot of people who, in a time when they could just be looking inward or looking outward, and they're saying, how can I help? whether it's a business leader who's taking the time to check on their employees and be sure they're okay, or somebody who's volunteered to help in the community, or a generous donor who says, I haven't lost my job, and so I'm willing to share with somebody who has. You know, those things give me hope. But I do think we need durable public policy solutions as well.
I join with all of you today to support and celebrate the Salvation Army's very important annual holiday luncheon. It's a time of year when families come together in a loving, sharing way. It's also a time of healing and renewed strength by being mindful of all the needs of others, especially those who are struggling to cope with setbacks during difficult times and those who are in need of a second chance in life. Salvation Army members teach us to lose ourselves in the service of others. I have been in public service all my life, and I've always admired the Salvation Army for consistently answering the call of anyone in need of a helping hand through compassion, love, and a sense of hope for the future. Today's program will focus on homelessness. I know only too well it's a complex issue, but one that the Salvation Army is well poised to handle through the Homelessness initiative that they are calling the Way Out. In fact, I'd say they are one of the few organizations that can really handle this issue and make lasting change for the population and bring about real change for all of San Francisco. Through the Way Out initiative, the Salvation Army will double its impact on homelessness by providing housing, workforce development opportunities, and holistic wraparound social services, all in a sober living environment, a trademark of the good work done by the Salvation Army. I congratulate this year's honoree. First Republic Bank is a community role model in helping the Salvation Army to pursue its humanitarian efforts. It's also a well-deserved honor from my personal friend and founder, Jim Hebert, for his outstanding professional service over the years. As a long-standing role model, Jim knows that a kind, sincere gesture of help can reach a wound that only compassion can heal. Let me close with one of my favorite quotes by Dr. Albert Schweitzer, a well-known physician and humanitarian, who stated, "I don't know what your destiny will be, but this I do know. The only ones among you who will be truly happy are those of you who have sought and found how to serve others." I thank you, all of you today, for helping others by assisting the Salvation Army in all the great work they are continuing to accomplish. So hats off to the past for what has already been done, and coats off to the future, for there is so much ahead of us to continue. May you have a meaningful, joyous holiday season. Thank you.
Well, we thank Mayor Jordan for his comments to encourage us today and to join in this opportunity to discuss the topic of homelessness in our city. You've heard a couple times now this word, the Way Out. The Way Out is a Salvation Army initiative, and at the heart of it, it is our desire to double our impact on homelessness. And we have a real opportunity here in the San Francisco area as we evaluated our properties and recognized that we have 5-6 buildings that we could repurpose and redevelop for homelessness, that in a very real way, the Salvation Army here in San Francisco can triple our impact on homelessness. And we've been working over the last few years on this initiative. You'll hear a little bit more about that in just a moment as the panel comes up. But first we're going to watch just a brief video on the Hummingbird site that we talked about earlier with Mayor Breed. And so I want you to just focus on the screens one more time, and then Theo Ellington, our Homeless Initiatives Director, will come and introduce the panel. Thank you.
All right. How's everybody doing? So before I start, I want to just you all to give a round of applause to our great servers who are serving us lunch today. As Major Darren mentioned, my name is Theo Ellington. I am the Director of Homeless Initiatives and Community Development for the Salvation Army. And I'm honored to be in year 2, where we are setting to redevelop and repurpose 6 properties here in San Francisco to aid the current homeless crisis. I announced this a little over 2 years ago, but I want to underscore that we have the capacity to add up to 1,700 new beds to the network here in San Francisco. And we cannot do that work alone. And I'm honored to introduce this esteemed panel. And I kind of feel like this is a family reunion because I have, in some capacity, worked alongside each of these individuals who I am about to introduce. First, former Mayor Art Agnos, who brings a, give him a round of applause. Yes, who brings a, second to last seat, who brings a real unique perspective to this discussion today as a former social worker. You can sit wherever you want. We'll figure, yes. Former social worker, former regional director of HUD. And I met Art Agnos, interesting enough, in a master's program at the University of San Francisco, where he walked in with a foam board advocating to make sure that the development of the Warriors Arena was equitable for all communities. Mayor Art Agnos. Our next panelist, Mr. Jason Elliott, serves as senior counsel to Governor Gavin Newsom, running all of the homeless operations out of the governor's office. And as you can see, this gentleman is no nonsense. And I learned that the hard way under Mayor Ed Lee when I organized a protest on the steps of City Hall. I had to walk into Mr. Elliott's office and face everything he had waiting for me. Yes, exactly. We are good. Gail Gilman, who runs, she's Chief Strategy Officer for All Home California. And Gail, I have something for you. This is going down memory lane, OCII, yes. Block 9. So not only does Gail have the lived experience, she has been advocating for over 20 plus years for vulnerable populations. We were down in Mission Bay fighting for a parcel to be affordable housing, and now she is running regional strategy for All Home California. And last but not least, Chanel Williams, who is like a big sister. Younger sister. No, she has really been, she's a San Francisco native like myself, first of all, and we carry great pride in being from San Francisco. But she is unafraid to stand up for what she believes in, no matter what the situation is. You might want to Google her to see what I'm talking about. But Chanel is the chair of the Prop C Committee, also known as Our City, Our Home. They're getting ready to dump a bunch of money here in the city and county of San Francisco to aid the homeless crisis. Please give it up for Ms. Chanel Williams. And you all know Major Matt Masson, who I report to. We've been working side by side for 2 years now to get this project off the ground, and he's been a tremendous person to work alongside with. Major Matt Masson.
Thank you so very much for being a part of our panel. I promise this won't hurt too much, okay? We'll get things started off here because time is short. I'd like to address Mayor Agnos. Mayor Agnos has a unique background in social work and later as the Western Regional Director of HUD. And in the past several years, we've seen many approaches to homelessness introduced. We'll ask Major Agnos to speak to the importance of creating housing opportunities at every level while also integrating the much-needed social services. Mayor?
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Very good. Thank you very much. I am delighted to be here and welcome the opportunity to salute the Salvation Army for its long and distinguished service to our city and indeed around the country and around the world. And also to salute First Republic Bank. Jason and I both have accounts there, don't we? Yeah. And we are pleased that our bankers are so engaged with our community. Of course, that's not new for First Republic. They've been doing it for a long, long time. So we're grateful to them. And to all of you who are here and those who couldn't be here because of whatever circumstances they may be in, thank you for their and your support and generosity. I was mayor a long time ago, and we've come a long, long way since I came into office in 1988, when we were just beginning to recognize that there were a lot of people on the streets of our cities, not only here but all over America, who were having difficulties finding housing. And we began to look at that for the first time with some serious recognition of the problem. Because prior to that, we treated people that we saw on the streets as some kind of a disaster. And it was, and it is, continues to be that. But at that time, we thought that people living on the streets was a temporary problem that we could fix. And we used what I call the American disaster model. We've seen that all over the country, still do, when there is a disaster, whether it's a tornado or an earthquake or anything in between. What do? When people are hurt, we go in, we take them out of the disastrous situation, we open up centers that are in a high school gymnasium or something else like that, where they come in, we set up their we set them up with blankets and beds. The Red Cross comes in with coffee and donuts, and after a couple of weeks, and when the disaster has subsided, they leave, they go back, and they resume their lives with whatever support comes from insurance policies, if it's an earthquake, and a variety. And it's handled with that kind of a model. And that's what we started to do, and in the late 80s when we saw people on the streets. We took them, we put them into a center where they could get some kind of sustenance, but in 2 weeks, nothing changed because we did not recognize that there were presenting issues that caused the homelessness. So it was not only being without a home, but it was also being without, depending on the person, a job, or it could be their mental health, it could be drug addiction, it could be runaway kids, it could be abused domestic partners, whatever. But that could not be fixed with 2 or 3 weeks in a facility that was designed as a disaster center. And so we began to recognize in 1988, 1989, that we needed to combine housing with the appropriate services depending on the needs of the individual who was on the street. And so we developed the first plan that incorporated the 3 kind of tiers that we still use today as the bones or the fundamentals of our approach to homelessness. The first is obviously an intake, some kind of an intake center where we start to take a look at each individual in order to determine what that person needs to get back on their feet if they're capable of it, in addition to a home. And so once that is done, in my day we called it a multi-service center. We evaluated people, diagnosed them, and then figured where do we put them. The second tier, of course, is transition housing with services across the board, and clearly the Salvation Army was one of the first. For me, when we started in 1988 with Beyond Shelter, and they created one of the first transition housing, the second tier in the 3-tier system we use, which was a place for homeless families and their children. It's called Harbor House, and it's been there ever since I was in office 30 years ago. And then the final tier, hopefully the end result of the previous 2, was to get people into independent living in housing like the rest of us live in, or something therein. Well, we've come a long way since then, but unfortunately the problem has gotten worse and worse and worse, so that today, and there are an estimated anywhere 12 to 15,000 people on the streets of our city. And you go to Oakland and they'll tell you the same thing. You go to San Jose and you hear the same thing. Los Angeles is even worse. So despite the fact that we've done extraordinary things with nonprofit partners, the private sector, as well as government, with mayors ever since me, giving their undivided attention to it, and I think that Mayor London, as she suggested in her comments, has had a double whammy, because in addition to dealing with the problem of homelessness, which is a serious #1 issue for all of us here in this city, she's had the challenge of dealing with a pandemic that, as she said, is even worse than trying to deal with an earthquake at the same time. And I commend her for doing an extraordinary job with the pandemic and doing a marvelous job with homelessness, even though it is still very prevalent with us today. So how are we going to change this? What's different? What are we going to do? Clearly, what we're hearing about the way out is extremely important and an essential piece of the city's response to this issue. But quite frankly, today, if I were mayor, it's not enough. It's not enough. I think that, and we're lucky that we have an administration in Washington that understands what this issue is all about and is sympathetic and supportive. But even more important, here in California, we've got a governor who has been a mayor in this city, who knows this better than anyone, and has made this an important priority for his administration in Sacramento, because he brings with him the understanding of what a mayor is going through here today. And so with that in mind, I'm going to surprise Jason here with what I call a exceptional intervention. I think that we need to revisit the question of opening the old mental hospitals that we had when Ronald Reagan was governor and closed, and and repurpose them to be therapy centers on a mass scale for the number of people we see who have mental problems in our cities, as well as drug addiction. And if we were to do that, when you talk about the statistics today in our city, just this one, somewhere between 12 and 15,000 people, with the estimates being anywhere from 40 to 50% of them being mentally ill or drug addicted, if we could take them and move them to therapy centers in the old hospitals that have been hopefully renovated and repurposed with support from the cities to operate them, I think that we would then be left with, say, half the population we see today in our cities. And that population is a manageable population, whether they are runaway kids or abused women or unemployed people or a variety of other issues that can be managed, in my opinion, on a local level with the resources that we have in place. However, if we are going to continue to try to deal with a needy, mentally ill population or a drug-addicted population that is in a halfway house in the Tenderloin who comes down to the street and has a supermarket in front of them, I don't think we're ever going to catch a hold of this. So I am proposing that we begin to explore the idea of a partnership with the state that reopens those facilities, repurposes them for the kind of population that needs their help today, and is supported so that the state doesn't have to pay the whole freight by some of the $1 billion that we're spending now in the city to try to keep up with this problem.
Thank you, Mayor Agnos. Well, Jason, you were kind of put on the spot there a bit, but you know, Mayor Agnos does ask a good question, and he's a very innovative man. I was amazed when I was learning more about some of your ideas. Like, let's bring in a Navy ship. Let's do this thing. You know, it takes stuff like that. And working with Admiral Bidoff.
Admiral Bidoff was my partner.
That's right. That's fantastic stuff. We need out of the box thinking. Jason, would you care to respond to the question?
I thank you for inviting me to this debate with Mayor Agnos today. I have the pleasure to be here. Thank the moderator of the debate. First of all, I appreciate being home. My heart is in San Francisco. We live in Sacramento now, but every time I get that feeling coming across the Bay Bridge, I love being home and I love seeing all of you. So thank you for inviting me back today. The answer to Mayor Agnos' question is we accept the challenge and we've started, is the short answer to the question. You're absolutely right that we need more capacity in this state, physical capacity, beds, clinics, with mental health services right in them. The answer is you're absolutely right about that. The way that we're proposing manifesting that vision, perhaps slightly differently, but as a man who's been in politics and government a long time, maybe you'll be open-minded to a slightly different response. And instead of opening what in California are mental hospitals are called the state hospitals, instead of reopening state hospitals, which in a number of cases either no longer exist or in serious disuse, it's not so much that the state hospitals are in disrepair, it's that, as Mayor Agnos sort of intimated, the way that we respond to homelessness is always evolving and changing as we learn more about what works and doesn't work. It is not static. And one of the things we've learned is that 100 or 200 or 300 people in one place is not necessarily conducive to healing and recuperating and getting back on one's feet. What we have found, and the research is found nationwide, and in fact Project Roomkey, which we can talk about later, works much better, are smaller settings and non-congregate settings where people can have a little bit of privacy and a little space to work on themselves, and being community-based, as opposed to Napa State Hospital, which is one of the big ones, which is not near necessarily the communities that people are trying to re-enter as they heal. So that's a very long way of saying we are spending in this budget that the governor just signed a couple months ago, $3 billion to create 22,000 of those beds. exactly of those beds. And they will come in the form of what some people know as board and care homes, which are smaller, maybe 4, 5, 6, 10, maybe 20 people, all the way up to clinics and more sort of hospital-feeling settings that are going to approximate those state hospitals. So the answer is that we agree that it is the only way out. If I'm allowed to say that, do I have to pay royalties to somebody? It's the only way. It's the only way out of this challenge that we face. Is opening up. We cannot do enough with our existing built capacity. We must add built capacity if we are serious about solving this challenge. The strategy that Governor Newsom has chosen to pursue is one of adaptive reuse. That's a wonky term we use for taking something that exists and turning it into something else. Adaptive reuse is really what we're thinking about doing, but in this case, deep clinical enhancement. We are not talking about apartment buildings where we shove people. We are talking about 24/7 care. We are talking about nurses and doctors. We are talking about medication-assisted treatment if that's necessary. We are talking about serious clinical support for people coming off the streets. So if we are successful, and God hopes we are, in a few years' time, we will have opened up 22,000 additional beds in California across the state for this precise purpose. That's just one part of a much larger homelessness agenda that I won't filibuster about. But I wanted to respond to Mayor Agnos because the answer is you're right. And we're deeply on our way. Now, final point, and I'll hand it back to you. We can't do any of this unless we have community leaders who are willing to say yes.
That's right.
It is far too easy in this state. And, you know, I was San Francisco oriented for 10 or 15 years. But now we travel around the state and we engage with communities around the state. It is so easy to find a reason to say no to one of these new community clinics that I've just described. It's so easy to say, well, I support doing something about homelessness, but I just think this particular corner isn't the right place to do that. There is always a reason. There is always a reason to say no. And unless we work together and push through that and find a reason to say yes, we're never going to get on top of this. So we can put as much money as we want into this. I can send the governor around the state to demagogue this issue at community forums up and down, and it's not going to make a lick of difference unless we have folks like Mayor Agnos and like the people in this room getting into those community meetings, getting into those city council meetings. I won't even start on the Board of Supervisors here, that's a different situation, but getting into those community meetings around the state and saying, we must say yes. Otherwise, our money is not going to be well spent. This manifests at the local level, and so we're going to need those partnerships locally if we want to get on top of this challenge.
Thank you so much. Well done. Well said. It's evident that we are not going to be able to solve this crisis in any one locality. It's going to take everybody working together, right? And All Home California is attacking that from that strategy, from that plan. And I'd like to ask Gail Gilman to discuss some of the innovative regional strategies that are being pursued by your organization to serve this Bay Area. Could you please share a bit?
Oh, thank you so much. And first of all, I wanted to thank Salvation Army for having All Home be here today. Salvation Army is a partner in what I'm just going to discuss. And also, Jason in the governor's office, they've been with us day one, realizing that while it's actualized at the local level, we need to be all acting regionally, particularly in the Bay, LA metro area and other areas to really combat this. So I just wanted to thank both those partnerships before I answer that question. All Home California works in the 9 Bay Area counties to combat homelessness and to assist people who are extremely low income with housing security and economic mobility. And just before I answer the question, just to level set what we're talking about, this is pre-pandemic. In the Bay, there were 800,000 people living on under $37,000 a year, and only 7% of them were experiencing homelessness. So the others, individuals living in extreme poverty, are living in the Bay. 41% of them were employed. Another 37% were seniors living on Social Security, to give you a snapshot. So All Home is very concerned about individuals now experiencing homelessness, but we're also concerned about the crescendo that we think is going to happen of new folks entering homelessness around the Bay. All Home launched a regional impact council. Mayor Breed was one of the 3 big city mayors to sit on that, along with many other people. And San Francisco, along with San Mateo County, Contra Costa, Napa and Santa Clara, and we'll get the Solano and Marin are coming along, and Sonoma, have pledged to reduce unsheltered homelessness by 75% by the end of 2024. And we're doing this with a regional approach, all sort of swimming together, acting together. And the work of the governor's office and the unprecedented resources that he has committed to homelessness over a 2-year budget cycle to give certainty to cities and counties of what they'll receive is the game changer. So we are calling for what's called interim housing, which is a fancy, fancy word for what we used to call transitional housing and non-congregate shelter. And we're looking to do that across the Bay in every jurisdiction, mostly by using modular pop-up construction, tiny homes, to give individuals that respite off the streets that Jason spoke about. If during the pandemic, the region could bring in close to 6,000 individuals who are either in congregate shelter or on the streets, we can act as a region and act with urgency to do it together. And it's key. San Francisco cannot do this alone. If San Mateo, Alameda, Marin, and others don't do it in lockstep, we're not going to really solve this crisis. I don't need a passport to go from San Mateo to San Francisco. And even during the shelter in home, I actually ventured out over the Golden Gate Bridge, and I had to go do something. And I was an essential worker. I brought my badge. I brought everything I needed to do. But I actually thought there'd be like military people at the Golden Gate Bridge checking all that. So my point is, people travel. People have things they need to do, and we need to combat this together. And I will say, I just want to dovetail on one thing Jason said that I really want to elevate is, it needs to be actualized at the local level. All Home is here to help with that. But I will just say, I've been in this space for almost 30 years. I used to run Community Housing Partnership, which was one of the largest providers of supportive housing in the city. I was here when this building was being built. And remember the struggle Salvation Army went in to site this building. I really want to help the homeless, but not on my street corner. We are hearing from everyone in the 9 Bay Area counties, it is at a fever pitch. It is the actual worst that it has ever been. Santa Clara just rejected a home key application. They voted it down at for family housing. For homeless family, their city council voted it down because they want to help the homeless, but not here. So I really want to urge all of you and Salvation Army to activate your networks, to speak up, to join a collective. All Home might be launching a collective advocacy campaign across the Bay, because we need folks like you to really say that we want our brothers and sisters who are experiencing homelessness to be indoors and be in our community. Close to 75% of individuals who are on our streets were housed in the communities they were living before they became homeless. Wow. And they don't want to move. Folks don't want to go to the Napa State Hospital if their whole community is in Redwood City. So we really need to do this collectively and together.
Thank you, Gail. And we're having such a great time in this panel discussion. I'm realizing the time is marching along. Chanel, we've got a few minutes left. Would you mind sharing with us about Prop C and what, the taxpayers, they decided, hey, this is a big issue, and we're ready to go forward with this. Can you share about where we're going with this Prop C money?
Yes, and thank you. I'm so honored to be here and amongst this illustrious panel, and thank you to Theo for that wonderful introduction. I am a San Francisco native, and I will say that it is the worst that I've ever seen in this community. In addition to serving on the Prop C as the chair of the Prop C committee, I also am the president of the Board of Trustees at City College of San Francisco. So for me, this is about intersections, right? I mean, we talk about education, we talk about social services, we talk about the mental health piece of this, and what is so great about Prop C is that we have an unprecedented opportunity with the amount of resources that we are now about to inject into the San Francisco community. $300 million a year. When we saw those headlines from our mayor, Mayor Breed, saying $1 billion $1 billion with a B dollars that we are going to be injecting into our community. This is unprecedented. So for us, it's about accountability, right? Like the board that I serve on, it's an amazing board. We have the resources there, but how do we put measures in place to really make sure that we're having an impact? That is the issue at hand. We want to make sure that we're not just investing in one intervention, we're investing in multiple interventions to meet people where they're at. Because as we know, there's a myriad of folks who end up homeless on our streets. I was just seeing the Chronicle spotlight in Oakland, and they're looking in Oakland at the homelessness, following 4 individuals who are homeless on the streets in Oakland. And you look at their stories and they're all so very different, right? And so it's not a cookie cutter size model, but one thing that we're committed to with the Prop C committee is that we're committed to centering lived experience, really talking to folks who are homeless, who've been formerly homeless, and having them guide the investments we make. We're also centering racial equity because the face of homelessness in San Francisco is Black men primarily. So we have to be real about that. How do we really lift up cultural responsiveness and making sure that we're meeting our Black community where they're at? And we really need to look at how do we bring folks together. We have all these different folks in silos, I would say in silos, and sometimes not working together as best that we should when it comes to these myriad of issues. So how do we sort of be a convener and bringing together these myriad of pieces of the problem? And so I would just say that we have an unprecedented opportunity here. We have some amazing experts, and it's amazing that we have all the sort of past mayors represented. I know Mayor Willie Brown couldn't be here, but this is a problem that's been going on for far too long. But now that we have the resources to make the difference, we have no excuse, and we have to really work with Salvation Army. We have to work with all of our community-based partners, bring folks to the table and figure out what are the interventions that are going to work best for our communities. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much. Folks, we've heard some great ideas, some great things. And I agree with everything everybody has said. This is some good stuff. If we can all agree, for the 4 people up on stage, and we can spread that agreement across, then we're going to start getting some things done, won't we? That's what we need to do. We need to work with one another. We need the government working with the private sector, private citizens out there loving their communities. That's what the Salvation Army does. And with this large infusion of money that's coming, the way we can look at it is like a shot of adrenaline. It's short-term strength to get us through a crisis, and we are in a crisis. And so thank you so very much for being a part of this panel. I do want to point out while we're up here, we have some gentlemen from our Way Out program, our new extension of our Harbor Light program, and we're doing the very thing that Mayor Agnos was talking about, wraparound services. These gentlemen, the statistics are showing that they're going to have a 90% success rate after a year of completion. Gentlemen, could you please rise so we can just... The Salvation Army is committed to continue to serve in this community, and homelessness is a big issue, and one of the big ways of working to prevent homelessness is stopping it from happening in the first place. And so we're going to watch a video of some of the great things that are going on in this community, and I'd invite you folks to come on down.
So when the pandemic hit, it changed up everything. It was like a lot of places had to shut down. It kind of created this level of isolation for us, and also just accessing technology and having that support around that in order for Nia to participate in things like summer camp or to be able to participate even in school. So the Kroc Center was able to do a virtual summer camp during the summer. They brought us the supplies to our house. I'm trying not to cry. They just did so many beautiful, wonderful things where Nia had like a music hour, an art hour, a reading too. I really am grateful to Kroc Center because they encouraged Nia to read chapter books, and she struggled with reading. She can read chapter books now. And I feel like Kroc Center is a big part of that support to make that happen for her. When Kroc said they were opening up a learning hub, it was just like my prayer had been answered, because it would be at a site that already knows her special needs. Once again, inclusion is so important to me, and they immediately worked with me. Monica's awesome, Andre, Francisco, Mercy, the whole staff, just everything that could be done to help support us so that she can get into the Learning Hub. The staff just being so accommodating, and just the Kroc Center accommodating. Nia is diagnosed with cerebral palsy, and so they practiced such inclusion with her, welcomed her in, worked with her. She was always part of all the activities. She was offered a lot of support. The staff was always, just helping, making sure that she was still able to participate in activities, whether it had to be modified in order for Nia to participate, and just being so supportive. And then not only doing all that, but then making sure we had hygiene products, making sure we had groceries. I mean, it was just like almost a wraparound service that I'm so grateful for. I almost wish that she could stay here till she's finishes high school. Thing that was awesome is movie nights. Even though, movie nights, we were doing it in person, and even though the pandemic happened, Kroc Center was like, oh, we're gonna still do movie night through virtual, and we're still gonna do the raffles. And it was just like, despite the pandemic, it didn't stop them making sure that our families got the support and access to fun, because I feel like it supports the entire community. It supported my entire family, where it's like I could have my daughter doing her homework, I can be in the computer lab doing my work, I can be working out, my son is doing, playing basketball with his friends, or, and just participating in the team program here. I just felt like it helped our family be together, but then get each individual needs met, all in one roof. I think every neighborhood should have a Kroc Center, and I just want to say that in life, we really should appreciate all these moments we have, because during this pandemic, it just takes those little small things that you might have taken for granted.
I brought one of our annoying bells up here to bring this time to a close. Starting tomorrow and for the next 4 to 5 weeks, you'll see our bell ringers out at stores. And the kettle that Mayor Breed mentioned earlier will be a fixture of another holiday season here in San Francisco and throughout the country. And when you hear the bell ring, we're encouraging donations. We're encouraging people to put money in the kettle. And so I'm here ringing this bell on behalf of Nia and the hundreds of kids who come to this place after school. I'm ringing this bell on behalf of the 110 people that live in the residences above us, homeless individuals, aged out foster youth, veterans, people in a transitional place in life. I'm ringing this bell on behalf of James and Nolan and Stephen and Dennis and the 200 or more people living at our Harbor Light Center, for the families and the men and women going through our detox program, through our recovery facility. I'm ringing this bell on behalf of the 4,000 people that will get a meal from the Salvation Army 1 week from today, and a Christmas meal on Christmas Day, people that are homebound and lonely and shut in. I'm ringing this bell on behalf of the 1,300 children and their families who will receive toys and a Christmas meal from the Salvation Army this year. I'm ringing this bell on behalf of the seniors who are living in our residences, who are taking activities at our program centers. And I'm ringing it on behalf of them. In your book today is a short report, financial and statistical report of the magnitude of the Salvation Army's programs in San Francisco. And I would invite you at this time to just make sure that you're able to leave a gift to help support the work of the Salvation Army this holiday season and throughout next year. There's an opportunity for you to leave cash or a credit card on here that you can scan to your phone to get to a donate link. If you're watching online, there's a donate button on the screen in front of you, and you will be able to make a donation to help brighten the lives of those who we serve. Some of you may want to explore the continued discussion on the homeless situation. There may be some of you that want to give a transformational gift to partner with us on the Way Out initiative. Or maybe you want to follow up with some discussion. Maybe you want to open some doors for us to meet with people. And we invite you, if you would like to follow up this conversation, learn more about the opportunities that the Salvation Army has, how we've been serving for 138 years, and how we're moving into some of the most critical days ahead, earmarking some of our properties to expand our work with those that are homeless. I invite you to meet with Theo at the end of this, exchange contact information, and we will reach out to you. We would love to share with you where we're at. And if you have any opportunity to give a transformational gift to help us move this initiative, then we would love to speak to you about that. But all donations from this event go into the general funds to help us do all of the activities that I just announced to you. So if you're able to do that just now as we bring this time to a close. I do want to thank again the panelists, just such powerful and pointed conversation, and we're so grateful for them for being with us today. I do want to thank again and congratulate First Republic Bank. Thank you for your partnership, for the fantastic work you do in the community, for being great partners with the Salvation Army in the work that we do. And we just honor you today on this 18th annual holiday luncheon. I do want to thank all of the officers, the officers that run the programs, that are on the front lines, that are here now scattered throughout, that are running our centers, that are overseeing the programs. Thank you for the work that you do day in and day out. Thank you for the employees and staff that are here as well. We thank you for the work that you do, partnering to help make a difference. We're so grateful for that. An event like this, in the midst of the pandemic, doesn't happen easily, and I just have to give a big shout out to Madison Barton. She's over here. She's our special events coordinator. Thank you, Maddie, for your tremendous work. Thank you to Ernst and Jennifer Bird and the rest of our team who have helped to put this together. Major Madsen, our secretary for San Francisco, thank you for all of your efforts and bringing your team together for this. Thank you to all of the volunteers and everybody has helped. We're sorry that we've gone a little bit over time. If you're able to leave a donation, we will put it to good use. We will do the most good with your donation this holiday season. Just leave your envelope on the table and someone will pick that up at the end. Again, thank you so much for joining us for this special day. Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, and we look forward to continuing the conversation surrounding homelessness and sharing with you all of the plans that we believe will begin to come to fruition. So may God bless you. Thank you for being here today, and have a great week.